it's the fear of falling into two hugely major sins. And those two hugely major sins that our community unfortunately is so consumed in, whether knowingly or unknowingly, and things that will really, the very, I think, core that corrodes this ummah as a whole, tail carrying and backbiting. Right? Fear of these two things should be enough for this person to say, I don't even want, I have no reason to know any, it should be enough. Because once you start really learning about what tail carrying and backbiting and the severity of the matter, and what it actually means and how much of a consequence it has upon our iman and our akhirah, you won't care at that moment about anything else, right? Like, what is backbiting? What is ghiba? Does anyone know what ghiba is, what backbiting is? Yep.
You say something about your brother that you weren't like behind his back.
Okay. Is it only behind his back? It could be in front of him too, right?
Yes.
So it's me saying anything about anyone here that they don't like. Whether it be true or false is then slander. That's a whole different ballgame. But we're talking about something that's true. Right? Imam Nawawi clarifies this, and he says this could mean literally anything about your Muslim brother or sister that he does not like. His height, his way of wearing clothes, his looks, his glasses, his clothes, the way he talks, the way he smells, anything that he would not like of you to talk about him like that or her like that, this is backbiting. This is ghiba. And the Prophet ﷺ said that backbiting is like the eating the flesh, right, of your Muslim brother, or the eating the flesh, right, of it, right. So it's not a small thing at all. It's a major sin in the sight of Allah, and it's something that we will be highly held to account for on the Day of Judgment. It's not something small whatsoever, and we do it. And how many ways do we do this? Like, sometimes we feel like backbiting is only if it's behind someone's back, right? And they'll like say stuff to the person's face, and they don't realize that they're backbiting. They're backbiting, right? They're doing ghiba, and they're consuming themselves in this backbiting. And sometimes it's not even words. Sometimes it can just be with, your hands and your motions and your gestures. Aisha radiallahu anha, she was talking about one of the wives of the Prophet, I think it was Safiya radiallahu anha, and she said she's just indicating she's short. Indicating that she's short. She didn't say anything. She just said short. The Prophet ﷺ said, you have said something that would contaminate all the seas. You've done something that will contaminate all the seas. Just by that one little hand gesture. So how many times do we make fun of someone? Just in the joking. Just in the pastime. Just think, like how many times do we do it? Now what's even more fearful than backbiting is namima, is tail carrying. What is tail carrying? Yeah?
Is it to go around and say that she said this about you or he said this about you?
Okay, yeah. And it could be true, right? It's true stuff, right? Amazing, this is like, I'll just use, right? Let's say I'm talking about you, to you, about Abdurrahman, talking about you. Talking to him, you don't know this. You then go to him and say, Yasin said this and this about you. It's true what I said. It's completely true. You might be doing it for whatever purpose. Maybe it's to, I don't know, to tell him that, he's not a good person, he's not a good friend, etc., etc., etc. It doesn't matter your purpose. You've committed namima. Namima is worse than backbiting. All you did was listen. All you did was listen to me backbite. That's what you did. You listened to me backbite. But you taking that and transmitting it to him, you've committed namima. And namima is bigger and grander than again, backbiting. The Prophet ﷺ said, the one who tail carries, the one who consumes himself in namima, will not enter paradise. Cutthroat, period. And that was the statement. Prophet ﷺ doesn't usually say these kinds of things, that someone will not enter into Jannah. And we get caught into this stuff a lot. Right? And we have to really draw the line as to when it's important, when it's not, when you think it's actually valid, right? Because sometimes it is valid to tell someone something like we were discussing earlier, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's not at all. And in the case of when someone does come to you, in terms of if they're tail carrying or if they're backbiting, there's a few things that you're required to do as a Muslim The first thing is you're not allowed to believe them. You're not allowed. It's a sin for you to believe that statement.
What if they were the source? I mean, they weren't really, like, they were the primary, like, they witnessed it and told you.
Doesn't matter. They're slandering. They're tail carrying. They're tail carrying. They shouldn't be telling you in the first place. They should be advising that brother or sister who's doing the thing. They shouldn't be telling
But
you.
what if someone spoke bad of you?
Doesn't matter. They shouldn't be telling you. They should be telling that brother or sister who spoke bad of you and advising them on what they did was wrong.
What if it's sort of in a sort of warning way, like, stay away from that brother?
No. No.
Are there no exceptions?
Well, there are, but that's not an exception. Okay? He could tell you in other ways. He doesn't have to tell you exactly what was said. Right? He doesn't have to transmit the exact thing that this brother said and tell you that
What if he
said
skirts
this.
around exactly what he said, just gave you, like, kind of a general thing?
Well, no. Still tail carrying. All he has to do, if he really wants to advise you, he would advise you and say, I don't think this brother's, or this, the situation's probably not good for you. He would just advise you in a normal way. He wouldn't bring that.
Specific
Yeah, he
example.
would. Yeah, so that's the first thing. You're not allowed believing it. You're not allowed believing that tail carrying, that backbiting that someone brings forward to you. That's actually one of the most important things. You're not allowed believing it. The second thing is you have to stop. You should stop that person from conveying it any further, and you yourself obviously should not be conveying it, right? There's many things that you can do. Another thing is at that time, Shaitan has a good way of working with the hearts of people, right? Someone tells you something negative about a brother who you think is, you might be, and this happens a lot with teachers and scholars and students and things of this nature, where a scholar, he's teaching the deen, he's teaching all this, and they spread his life in teaching the people. On comes someone who thinks he's, Mr. Righteous, Mr. Pious, and he tells, this sheikh, he's da'if, he's weak, he does this, he does that. And now, okay, he doesn't bring any, there's no proof, there's no nothing, he's just saying this out of randomness. But now what happens in your heart, you might get some kind of resentment. It might build some kind of, you're not believing it, but then you start doubting yourself. Maybe he's not correct. Maybe there's something random about this person. But that's Shaitan at work, right? That's what he wants to do. He wants to cause that rift and that problems, right? You shouldn't let it affect you either. In terms of your behaviors and your actions, you should continue being normal, because it's as if that incident never occurred. Okay? No one brought to your attention that stuff. And there's a lot of stuff, really. You could teach a whole class on just namima and backbiting and these diseases and how you can get across them and the solutions and whatnot. But this is not the time for that.